أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري يسر لي أمري واحلل لساني يفقهوا قولي آمين رب العالمين. Okay, so it's 10:50 already, very late. So let's start with the ayah that was there yesterday. And in Surah Anam chapter 6 verse number 12, what belongs to Allah and what has He decreed upon Himself? Okay, and then we go back to the comments. To Allah belongs whatever is in the heavens and the earth, and He has decreed upon Himself mercy. Okay, very good. So we'll do Surah An'am chapter 6, verse number 13, inshallah. Okay. So you can read A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Can you hear me, Asma?
Yeah.
Yes. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, I can. Sorry, the mic wasn't like unmuting.
Okay.
Okay, into أعوذ بالله من الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وله ما سكن في الليل والنهار وهو السميع العليم.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Okay, wa is and, la is for, and who is him. Walahu, and for him, ma, whatever, sakana. Sakana means to live, to dwell. Fi in al-layl. Al is the, layl is night. Wa and al is the an-nahar. Nahar is the day. One nahar and the day. Wa and huwa he. As-sami'. As-sami' is all hearing and alim is all knowing. You can read the translation. Yes, Asma, you can read the translation.
Yeah, okay. And to him belongs that which reposes by night and by day, and he is the hearing, the knowing.
Yes, very good. So let's see what the Tafsir says here. Tafsir ibn Kathir. Allah is the creator and the sustainer. So this is from 12 to 16. It will be the same idea. Allah states that He is the king and owner of the heavens and earth and all of what is in them, and that He has written mercy on His most honorable self. It is recorded in the two Sahihs, and Abu Huraira, Prophet ﷺ, said, when Allah created the creation, He wrote in a book that He has Him above the throne. My mercy overcomes my anger, Allah said. Indeed, He will gather you together on the day of resurrection, about which there is no doubt, swearing by Him most honorable self, and He will gather His servants. For appointed meeting of a known day, the day of resurrection is going to occur. Night and the day, same thing. All creatures in heaven and earth are Allah's servants and creatures, and they are all under His authority, power, and will. There is no deity worthy of worship except Him. Okay, I just wanted to see if there's anything specific for day and night to worship than Allah or you. Um, he who Feed and use does not eat, okay. There's a lot. Okay, let's see. And wherever is moved away from the fire. 185. Success here indicates acquiring profit and negative. Oh, sorry. And negates loss. Okay. So let's see what we can do. And to him belongs what response? Okay. Password, add, reuse post. Okay. The verse number is 13. Very small ayah, so that's why the answer will be just the ayah itself. What reposes by night? I'll make it easy. No, I want to make a question that brings the whole answer. Okay, so questions I put what reposes day and night. Okay, and the answer will be just and to Allah belongs what reposes, and to Him you will write Allah, right? So and to Allah belongs that which reposes by day and night, and He's all hearing and all knowing. He knows everything. That's the answer. When you're done, let me know. Something. Are you done? It's not too much. Asma? Are you there, Asma?
Yeah, I'm here almost.
It shouldn't take that much time. It's just one sentence. Are you done?
Almost.
I don't know why it took you so long. Yeah, then you did not put a period. To Allah belongs whatever reposes day and by night. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and can continue. I've already lost our time. Okay.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम वरहमतुल्लाहि वबरकातुहू।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
औज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम। रब्बि इश्रह ली सदरी व यस्सिर ली अमरी वहलुल उक़दतम मिन लिसानी यफ़क़हू क़ौली। Anything. Okay, you can read world history. You can read it, world history.
Huh? And places. We did that prehistoric times. Did we do that? Okay. The Stone Age. Evidence of life from about 3,000 years ago has been found in cave paintings, in burial chambers, and in the form of crude tools. But what about the time dating earlier than that? This prehistoric period, before writing and civilizations, is called the Stone Age, and it is extremely valuable to our understanding of our earliest hominid ancestors. Hominids comprise humans today. Extinct ancestors and apes that share similarities with humans. The earliest and longest period of the Stone Age is called the Paleolithic Age. This comes from the Greek word paleos, meaning long ago or old, and lithos, meaning stone. To put together Paleolithic Age, it means Old Stone Age. The Old Stone Age began approximately 4.5 million years ago. It lasted until about 25,000 years ago, relatively recently in terms of the overall age of the Earth. It was as the beginning of the Old Stone Age, approximately 4.4 million years ago, that the first human ancestors made their appearance on Earth. Approximately 3.5 million years ago, hominids began walking upright. What did they eat? Where did they live? The archaeological evidence is not clear. Those who study the earliest hominids do know, however, that these human ancestors physically changed in response to their environment. Chill out. Dramatic changes in the world climate started taking place about 1.5 million years ago. Most of the world became cold, really cold. This plunge in temperature began one of the four distinct periods of frigid temperature known as an ice age. Each of these frigid periods lasted from 10,000 to 50,000 years. The most recent chilled the Earth was just over 10,000 years ago. During this most recent ice age, the northern polar ice cap moved so far south that massive sheets of ice were created over much of the northern hemisphere. In some areas, the ice was several miles thick. About one-third of the Earth's surface was encased in an icy layer. There's 4 times the amount of ice normally found on Earth today. Naturally, hunting and gathering abilities were interfered with it during the ice ages. On these frigid years, once these frigid years were over, a revolution took place. Humans started planting crops. The new way of life, which began around 10,000 years ago, led to permanent settlements and the world's first communities. Farming and domestication of animal market and the beginning of the Neolithic Age, also called the Stone Age. So, what did they wear and eat? What follows is a look at some of our earliest known human ancestors, how they lived, how they changed, and how they interacted with their environments. Archaeologists and anthropologists unearth the remains of the prehistoric people. Their work helps to answer profound questions. Who are humans? Where did we come from? Where are we going? Mm, Food, clothing, and shelter. Could you survive in the wild? TV shows like Gilligan's Island and Survivor, and books and movies like Lord of the Flies asks this question. Small groups of people are set down on a deserted island and left to fend for themselves. They have none of the things we take for granted, such as easy access to food, shelter, clothing, or video games. There are no cities, no roads, no tools, no doctors, no computers, and no malls. In part, these shows are so compelling because it's interesting to ponder how each one of us would do in such a setting. Could you create tools, make rules, gather food, or work with wood? Could you weave clothes, protect your toes, fight off a beast, or know which direction is east? Hey, what? They rhymed. Now take yourself back 20,000 years for Neanderthal man. Each and every day was a challenge. How was life like for the and Neanderthals? How did early humans find food, make clothing, and seek shelter? Modern day from animals were pretty different from the original wild animals. To find out where the horse and chicken came from. Jungle Town. Before answering these questions, it'll be useful to understand how we know what we know about early hominids. Hominids are from the family Hominidae and refer to primate mammals who could stand on two legs. We are hominids as we were our ancestors, including Java man, Neanderthal man, Beijing man, and Lucy. When studying humans, historians strongly rely on written records to gather info about the past. The history, as it pertains to mankind, is said to begin with the invention of writing about 5,000 years ago. But humans lived long before the invention of writing. Prehistory refers to the long time before period before writing was invented. How do we know what life was like if there were no written records of prehistory? Anthropologists and archaeologists work together with other scientists in answering this question. They use artifacts and fossils, clues from ancient times after testing and analyzing them. Educated conclusions are made about life in prehistoric times. Some of the conclusions are wrong, some are somewhat correct, and others may be entirely correct. Some theories will change as the next generations of scientists and historians glean more information. Imagine yourself digging through a stranger's trash. You can draw some conclusions about his or her life based off of what you find. While archaeologists don't exactly dig through trash, they do sift through fossil remains and artifacts and try to explain things for the ages. Mm, Prehistory is divided into different time periods. The use of stone tools by early people led historians to apply the name Stone Age to the period before writing became established. The Paleolithic or Old Stone Age began about 4.5 million years ago and lasted until about 8,000 BCE. Many anthropologists believe that creatures vaguely resembling Homo sapiens, that's us today, may have lived at the onset of the Stone Age. Age. The Neolithic or the New Stone Age lasted from 8000 BCE until approximately 3000 BCE. And by the end of this era, villages and farms had come into existence. Scientists believe that the earliest hominids may have used caves as shelters. They probably ate vegetables and gathered seeds, fruits, nuts, and other edible plants. Later, the scientists speculate meat was added to the diet as small animals were hunted. Eventually, humans hunted large animals. In order to hunt successfully, early men had to work together. As humans became successful hunters, they migrated over great distances in search of food. For nearly a million years, however, periods of extremely cold weather during the Ice Age limited the areas to which early people could migrate. Prehistoric people learned how to use fire and make warm clothing in response to this cold climate. In 1856, human remains were found in the Neander Valley of Germany. This is where the Neanderthal people lived some 60,000 years ago. They had stocky builds, heavy jaws, thick eyebrow ridges, and large noses. Unlike hominids who came before them, they made efficient tools and wore heavy clothing made of animal skins. So this is a Neanderthal. Most Neanderthals lived in groups of 50 people. Mm, Some may have dwelled in open-air camps along the shores of lakes and rivers they cared for their sick and aged, and may have been the first to practice a primitive form of medicine. The Cro-Magnons were one of the earliest Homo sapiens. They lived in Europe and lived after the Neanderthals. They lived inside cave entrances, while others built huts in forested areas. Longhouses made of stone bricks were also used for communities of 30 to 100 people. Hunting weapons, which allowed for a safe distance, such as the spear and bow, were used to hunt the woolly mammoth and bison. How did early Homo sapiens, such as Cro-Magnons, compare with humans of today? In essence, we are brainier and they were brawnier, but the similarities, despite the passage of thousands of years, are striking. Mm, Because there was no written language 50,000 years ago, we do not have much information on how a modern Stone Age family lived, what they ate, where they lived, what they wore, or even what they looked like. Like Fred Filston, did they have leopard skin suits, go barefoot or foot, and use a boulder for a bowling ball? Archaeologists and anthropologists who study this time period do have artifacts upon which they can begin to draw some conclusions. Techniques like carbon dating can help scientists determine the age of objects and bones, large human skulls, body bones, animal skeletons, cave paintings, and scientific ideas on ancient climate patterns allow scientists to draw a picture on what life may have been like for primitive people. Archaeologists then excavate artifacts as cattle Huyuk. This Turkish site is one of the oldest human settlements to be discovered. As a result of the Neolithic Revolution, humans were forced to settle in one place permanently in order to grow food. Shown here is an example of early Neolithic settlement, the remnants of an early village in Jordan. Mm, People living in Africa and advances in agriculture sparked the beginning of the Mesolithic Age or Middle Stone Age. This period lasted from 12,000 till about 10,000 years ago in Africa and Asia. Although this date varies according to the region, raising crops for food signifies the beginning of a new way of life for people. The Neolithic Age or New Stone Age was revolutionary. About 10,000 years ago, people learned to make better tools and weapons, establish permanent villages, and domesticate animals for food and work. They were beginning to live like modern people. This Neolithic or agricultural revolution did not happen overnight. It took several millennia after the first discovery of agriculture for people to form settled societies. Mm, the Jarmo in present-day Iraq was one of the oldest mm, at 8,750 years ago. This little town was home to 200 inhabitants. Çatalhöyük in present-day Turkey was an even larger society with almost 3,000 residents 8,000 years ago. Slowly but surely, modern human beings had evolved. The Neolithic Revolution and Rise of River Valley Civilizations. The term Neolithic Revolution was coined in 1923 by Gordon Child to describe the first in a series of agricultural revolutions in Middle Eastern history. The period is described as a revolution to denote its importance and the great significance and degree of change affecting the communities in which new agricultural practices were gradually adopted and refined. The beginning of this process in different regions has been dated from 10,000 to 8,000 BC in the Fertile Crescent and perhaps 8,000 BC in the early agricultural site of Melanesia of 2500 BC in sub-Saharan Africa, with some considering the developments of 9,000 to 7,000 BC in the Fertile Crescent to be the most important. This transition everywhere seems associated with a change from a largely nomadic hunter-gatherer way of life to a more settled agrarian-based one. With the inception of the domestication of various plant and animal species, depending on the species locally available and probably also influenced by local culture. Recent archaeological research suggests that in some regions, such as the Southeast Asian peninsula, the transition from hunter-gatherer to agriculturalist was not linear but region-specific. A civilization or a civilization in British English is any complex state. No, 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 no. Okay. A civilization in British English is any complex state society characterized by urban development, social stratification, symbolic communication forms, typically writing systems, and a perceived separation from and domination over the natural environment. Civilizations are intimately associated with and often further defined by other socio-political economic characteristics, including centralization and domestication of both humans and other organisms, specialization of labor, culturally ingrained ideologies of progress and supremacism, monumental architecture, taxation, societal dependence upon agriculture, and expansionism. Historically, a civilization was an advanced culture in contrast to more supposedly barbarian, savage, or primitive cultures. In this broad sense, a civilization contrasts with non-centralized feudal or tribal societies, including the cultures of nomadic pastoralists or hunter-gatherers as an uncountable noun. Civilizations also refer to the process of a society developing into a centralized, urbanized, stratified structure. Hmm. Civilizations are organized in densely populated settlements divided into a hierarchical social classes with a ruling elite and subordinate urban and rural populations, which by the engagement in intensive agriculture, mining, small-scale manufacture, and trade, civilization concentrates power, extending human control over the rest of nature, including over other human beings. Th- Think fire wasn't a big deal. Think again. Read this article about how the origin of cooking affected our brains. Oh. The Tigris and Euphrates River Valley. Wait. Yeah, I already read this. Okay, yeah. In the Nile River Valley. Hieroglyphics, pyramids, mummies, the Sphinx of Giza, King Tut, and Cleopatra. The sands of the Nile River Valley hold many clues about one of the most mysterious, progressive, and artistic ancient civilizations. A great deal of evidence survives about how the ancient Egyptians lived, but questions remain. Even the wise Sphinx would have trouble answering some of them. How were the pyramids built? Who came up with the idea for mummies and why? What was a typical day like for a pharaoh? In 3000 BCE, Egypt looked similar geographically to the way it looks today. The country was mostly covered by desert, while along the Nile River was a fertile swath that proved and still proves a life source for many Egyptians. And the Nile is the longest river in the world. It flows northward for nearly 4,200 miles. In ancient times, crops could be grown only along a narrow 12-mile stretch of land that borders the river. Early Egyptians grew crops such as beans, wheat, and cotton, despite the lack of many natural resources, such as forests or an abundance of land for farming. A great society emerged. Egyptians artisans smelted copper and gold for architectural, and even military purposes. Earlier in history, Neolithic, Late Stone Age, people thrived in the Nile Valley. The remains that have been uncovered date back to about 6000 BCE. But it wasn't until 3800 BCE that the valley's inhabitants began to form a cohesive civilization. The road to civilization required more organization and increased efficiency. Farmers began producing surplus crops that allowed others to not only to concentrate on farming but also pursue other trades such as mercantilism or skilled craftwork. Egyptian artisans created copper tools such as chisels and needles, all new inventions, which allowed them to fabricate ornamental jewelry. Artisans also discovered how to make bronze by mixing copper and tin, which marked the beginning of the Bronze Age. Evidence suggests that ancient Egyptians invented the potter's wheel. This tool makes it easier to create pots and jars for storage, cooking, religious needs, and decoration. Mm. Pharaohs and the legacy of ancient Egypt. The pharaohs who ruled Egypt for about 3,000 years were by and large capable administrators, strong military leaders, sophisticated traders, and overseers of great building projects. A brief timeline of ancient Egypt. Ancient Egyptian civilization spanned thousands of years from the c 3000 BC until the annexation by Rome in 30 BCE. Writing also set the Egyptians apart from some of their neighbors. Egyptians used hieroglyphics or pictures to represent words and sounds. This early form of writing was discovered by the Western world after Napoleon's army invaded Egypt in 1798. The Rosetta Stone, a black tablet and containing inscriptions, was deciphered and became crucial in unlocking the mystery of hieroglyphics and understanding Egyptian history. Understanding Egyptian history. Ancient Egyptian civilization lasted for several thousand years. Many of its discoveries and practices have survived an even greater test of time. In fact, one of the ancient Egyptian inventions and calendar has helped to define time itself. Life along the Nile. None of the achievements of the remarkable ancient Egyptian civilization would have been possible without the Nile River. There is always a connection between landscape and how a people develop. Mm, It does not take the wisdom of a sphinx to understand why. Archaeologists and historians don't know exactly how Egyptian civilization evolved. It is believed that humans started living along the Nile's banks starting in about 6000 BCE. For the earliest inhabitants of the Nile Valley, food was not easy to find. There were no miktuts selling burgers, and though there were a lot of crocodiles, those critters were pretty hard to catch. No food for thought. Over time, however, despite being in the midst of desert surroundings, people discovered that the Nile River provided many sources of food. Along the river were fruit trees, and fish swam in the Nile in great numbers. Perhaps most importantly, they discovered that at the same time each year the Nile flooded for about 6 months. As the river receded, it deposited a rich brown layer of silt that was suitable for growing wheat, beans, barley, or even cotton. Farmers learned to dig short canals leading to fields near the Nile, thus providing fresh water for year-around irrigation. Planting immediately after a flood yielded harvests before the next year's flood. Prime time. In order to know when to plant, the Egyptians needed to track dates. They developed a calendar based on the flooding of the Nile that proved remarkably accurate. It contained a year of 365 days divided into 12 months of 30 days each. The 5 extra days fell at the end of the year. Here's a problem that the Sphinx may have trouble answering. How did the Egyptians make their calendars? What material did they use? Remember, there was no paper. Need a clue? Take a dip in the Nile. Mm, Large reeds called the papyrus grew wild along the Nile. The Egyptians developed a process that turned these reeds into flattened material that could be written on, also called papyrus. In fact, the English word paper has its root in the ancient Greek word papyrus. Among the first things written on papyrus were calendars that tracked time. But papyrus had many other uses. Boats were constructed by binding the reeds together in bundles, baskets, mats, rope, and sandals were also fashioned from this multi-purpose material. Sand, land, and civilization. The Sahara, the world's largest desert, encroaches on the western shore of the Nile River. And even other deserts lie to the Nile's east. Egypt's location within the woods, the driest region, helped to protect it from invaders throughout the centuries. Even today, the world around the Nile is quite barren. Mm, Outside of the narrow swath of greenery next to the river, there is sand as far as the eye can see. To the Nile's west exists the giant Sahara Desert, the largest desert in the world. From north to south, the Sahara is between 800 and 1,200 miles wide. It stretches over 3,000 miles from east to west. The total area of the Sahara is more than 3,500,000 square miles. It's the world's biggest sandbox. And as if there wasn't enough sand in the Sahara, east of the Nile are other deserts. Although sand has limited uses, these deserts presented one tremendous strategic advantage. Few invaders could ever cross the sands to attack Egypt. The deserts proved too great a natural barrier. After learning to take advantage of the Nile's floods and not having to fear foreign attacks, the Egyptians concentrated on improving farming techniques. As the years passed, Egyptians discovered that wheat could be baked into bread, that barley could be turned into soup or even beer, and that cotton could be spun into clothing. Hmm. With many of life's necessities provided, the Egyptians started thinking about other things such as art, government, religion, and philosophy, some of the basics needs to create a civilization. Eventually, pyramids, mummies, Cleopatra, and the Sphinx of Giza became touchstones of this flourishing culture. Egyptian social structure. Egyptian society was structured like a pyramid. At the top were the gods such as Ra, Osiris, and Isis. Egyptians believed that the gods controlled the universe, therefore, it was important to keep them happy. They could make the Nile overflow, cause famine, or even bring death. That's what they. The Egyptians also elevated some human beings to gods. Their leaders, called pharaohs, were believed to be gods in human form. They had absolute power over their subjects. After pharaohs died, huge stone pyramids were built as their tombs. Pharaohs were buried in chambers within the pyramid. A typical depiction of a pharaoh after Djoser of the Third Dynasty, pharaohs were usually depicted wearing the mummies' headdresses and a false beard and an ornate kilt. Because the people of Egypt believed that their pharaohs were gods, they entrusted their rulers with many responsibilities. Protection was at the top of the list. The pharaoh directed the army in case of a foreign threat or an internal conflict. All laws were enacted in the discretion of the pharaoh. Each farmer paid taxes in form of grain, which were stored in the pharaoh's warehouses. This grain was used to feed the people in the event of a famine. Hmm. The chain of command. Ancient Egyptian to royalty, nobility, and clergy enjoyed the lives of wealth and comfort, while farmers and slaves struggled to subsist. No single person could manage all these duties without assistance. The pharaoh appointed a chief minister called a vizier as a supervisor. The vizier ensured that taxes were collected. Working with the vizier were scribes who kept government records. These high-level employees had mastered a rare skill in ancient Egypt. They could read and write. Right below the pharaoh in status were no powerful nobles and priests. Only nobles could hold government posts. In these positions, they profited from tributes paid to the pharaoh. Priests were responsible for pleasing the gods. The nobles enjoyed a great status and also grew wealthy from donations to the gods. All Egyptians, from pharaohs to farmers, gave gifts to the gods. Soldier on. Soldiers fought in the wars or quelled domestic uprisings during long periods of peace. Soldiers also supervised the peasants, farmers, and slaves who were involved in building such structures as pyramids and palaces. Skilled workers, such as physicians and craftsmen, made up the middle class. Craftsperson made and sold jewelry, pottery, papyrus products, tools, and other useful things. Naturally, there were people needed to buy goods from artisans and traders. These were the merchants and storekeepers who sold these goods to the public. The bottom of the heap. At the bottom of the social structure were slaves and farmers. Slavery became the fate of those captured as prisoners of war. In addition to being forced to work on building projects, slaves toiled at the discretion of the pharaohs or nobles. Farmers attended the fields, raised animals, kept canals and reservoirs in good order, worked in the stone quarries and built the royal monuments. Farmers paid taxes that could be as much as 60% of their yearly harvest. That's a lot of hay. Social mobility was not impossible. A small number of peasants and farmers moved up the economic ladder. Families saved money to send their sons to village schools to learn trades. These schools were run by priests or by artisans. Boys who learned to read and write could become scribes, then go on to gain employment in the government. It was possible for a boy born on a farm to work his way up into the higher ranks of the government. Bureaucracy proved lucrative. And then dynasties. What's a dynasty? It's a powerful group or family that maintains its position for a number of years. And the New York Yankees baseball team of the 1920s is considered a dynasty. Of almost every year, it has great leaders such as Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. Egypt also had dynasties, so they were families who often ruled for a considerable number of years and did impressive things, such as building pyramids during their rule. The history of ancient Egypt is divided into three main periods. The Old Kingdom, about 2700 to 2200 BCE, the Middle Kingdom, 2050 to 1800 BCE, and the New Kingdom, about 1550 to 1100 BCE. The New Kingdom was followed by a period called the Late New Kingdom, which lasted about 343 BCE. Intermediate kingdoms, those without strong ruling families, filled the gaps of time in between the Old, Middle, and New Kingdoms. During these periods, power passed from one dynasty to another. A dynasty ruled until it was overthrown, or there were no heirs left to rule. Each kingdom ended in turmoil, either after a period of infighting or after being invaded. There were more than 30 dynasties in Egyptian history. Dynasties helped keep Egypt united, which was no easy task. Leaders faced periods of chaos, ambitious rivals, and also foreigners who wanted to conquer the region. Mm, Beginning in about 4000 BCE, all of the Egyptian society existed in two kingdoms, Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Around 3100 BCE means the king of Upper Egypt started the long string of dynasties by conquering Lower Egypt. He unified the regions and built his capital city at Memphis. Near the border of these two kingdoms, because Memphis was located on an island in the Nile, it was easy to defend. So began the first dynasty, in age appropriately called the early dynastic period. Little is known of the pharaohs, rulers of the early dynasties. The Egyptian word pharaoh literally means great house. Pharaohs were more than just rulers. They were considered gods and were believed to possess the secrets of heaven and earth. Mm. And pharaohs led the government and the army and wielded unlimited power. The step pyramid of Nedrefta in Saqqara, believed to have been the first pyramid constructed in Egypt, was completed in the 27th century BCE. During the Third Dynasty, the pyramid building progressed through the dynasties, culminating in the pyramids of Giza. The Old Kingdom. After 300 years after the Medes united Egypt, its rulers formed a central government in which they held supreme power. This was the beginning of the Old Kingdom. Kings tend to rule from a central place, which is why the early dynastic period is not considered a kingdom. Amenem, the what? Amenem, the what? Amenem, what? Amenemhat the Third was one of the great rulers of the Middle Kingdom. During his time as pharaoh, the pyramid of Hawara was built. During the Old Kingdom, pyramid building flourished. He upset the 6 million-ton Great Pyramid of Giza, constructed as his tomb under Chephren, a fourth dynasty ruler. The Great Sphinx was built. The end of the Old Kingdom was marked by civil wars between pharaohs and nobles. The Middle Kingdom. Montuhotep, 2007 through 1956 BCE, and 11th dynasty pharaoh, was the last ruler of the Old Kingdom and the first ruler of the Middle Kingdom. He and his successors restored political order. The Middle Kingdom is remembered as a time of flourishing arts, particularly in jewelry making. Egypt became a great trading tower during this period and continued massive construction projects. Mm. Eventually, the long reign of prosperity gave way to all the problems, crop failures and economic woes, dynastic power struggles, and foreign invaders. Mm. Amenemhat of the 12th dynasty was responsible for the construction of two great projects. He completed the building of the giant water wheels of the Fayum region that diverted the floodwaters of the Nile, and Amenemhat also constructed the pyramid of the Hawara, which became known as the Labyrinth. It contained about 3,000 rooms. Mm. Trouble struck when a group of foreigners, the Hyksos, a Semitic Asiatic group, invaded the Nile Delta region. These advanced warriors used new tools for war, bronze weapons, and horse-drawn chariots. And they defeated the Egyptians, who fought on foot with copper and stone weapons. The New Kingdom. Early pharaohs of the New Kingdom evicted the Hyksos. The New Kingdom is remembered as a time of renaissance in artistic creation, but also at the end of the dynastic rule. The period was also marred by corrupt priests and tomb robbing by government officials. A famed pharaoh of the new period was Amenhotep the Fourth, who triggered a religious revolution. Before Amenhotep's rule, Egypt was a polytheistic society that believed in many gods. The most important named Amun, but Amenhotep believed only in Aton, the sun god. A belief in only one god, monotheism, was a radical notion. To show his devotion to Aton, the pharaoh had changed his name to Anakheton, he who is loyal to Aton. And Akhenaton moved his capital from Thebes, where Amun was worshipped, to Tel El Amarna. Naturally, the priests who represented the other gods did not like this change one bit. Many Egyptians also did not like the pharaoh, discrediting their gods after the death of the Aaron, the powerful priests, forced the new capital to be moved back to Thebes. The Tut. The pharaoh who moved the capital back to Thebes was a boy king. He ruled for 9 years, attempted to pacify the priests, and was responsible for some modest building projects. He began his reign at the age of 10, but died of a head injury at 19. But his name is famous. Tutankhamun, or more familiarly, King Tut. Tut is mostly remembered because of his beautiful tomb, one of the very field that was not pillaged by grave robbers. Ramses II, or Ramses the Great, was another important ruler during this period. He reigned for 67 years and died about 1213 BCE. At age 96, his nearly 200 wives and concubines bore 96 sons and 60 daughters. Not only did Ramesses build a great family, but he also built two temples at Abu Simbel, Abu Simbel, a covered hall of giant pillars at Karnak, additions at the Luxor Temple and the Ramesseum, a compound consisting of two temples and a palace. After Ramses's rule, after Ramses' rule, fell into steady decline. Today, his 3,000-year-old mummy lies in a display case on the second floor of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, Egypt's capital. Over the course of the next 9 centuries, the Nubians, the Assyrians, and the Persians founded into Egypt and ravaged the area. One pharaoh, Nectanebo II, retreated to Memphis to avoid death at the hands of oncoming Persian invaders in 343 BCE. He became the last Egyptian-born pharaoh, ending over 2,500 years of Egyptian self-rule. The pyramids. For centuries, they were the tallest structures on the planet. The pyramids of Giza, built over 4,000 years ago, still stand atop an otherwise flat, sandy landscape. One of the 7 wonders of the world, the pyramids defy 21st century humans to explain their greatest secrets. How could a civilization that lacked bulldozers, forklifts, and trucks build such massive structures? Why would anyone have spent the time and energy to attempt such a task? What treasures were placed inside these monuments? Only a powerful pharaoh could marshal the necessary human resources to build the giant pyramids. During flood seasons, farmers became builders. Huge stone blocks, averaging over 2 tons in weight, were mined in quarries and transported to the pyramid site. Egyptologists theorize that the workers used either rollers or slippery clay to drag the blocks from the quarries to their eventual placement on the pyramid. Construction of the larger pyramids took decades. Why pyramids? Pyramids were built for religious purposes. The Egyptians were one of the first civilizations to believe in an afterlife. They believed that a second life, called the Ka, lived within every human being. When the physical body expired, the Ka enjoyed eternal life. Those fortunate enough to pass the test of Osiris wanted to be comfortable in their lives beyond Earth. The Great Pyramids were simply grand tombs of powerful pharaohs. 3 pyramids were built at Giza, and many of the smaller pyramids were constructed around the Nile Valley. The tallest of the Great Pyramids reached nearly 500 feet into the sky and spans an area greater than 13 acres. The Great Sphinx was sculpted nearby to stand watch over the pyramids. It stands 65 feet tall and consists of a human head atop the body of a lion. Many believe that the Sphinx was a portrait of King Chephren, Khafret, who placed in the middle pyramid. The lion symbolized immortality. You take it with you. Egyptians who ranked higher in status often wanted to take their most prized possessions with them in death, so the Ka could enjoy with them in its next life. Gold, silver, and bronze artifacts were loaded into the interiors of the great tombs. Fine linens and artwork adorned the secret chambers. In the early days, dead nobles were often interned with their living slaves and animals because this practice eventually proved too costly. Artists instead depicted scenes of human activity on the inside walls. Some pyramids were even equipped with a restroom for the pharaoh. Mm, Inside pyramids, such as the one for King Pepi, the first passageways led to a main burial chamber. Designs varied for each pyramid. Hmm. Possibly for each pyramid. Great precautions were taken to protect the tombs from looters. The Egyptians believed that a defiler of a pharaoh's resting place would be cursed for eternity. The entrance to the inner chambers were carefully hidden. The pharaoh's mummy was placed in a huge coffin called a sarcophagus, which was made of the hardest known stone blocks. But despite such warnings and precautions, the tombs were raided over the years by grave robbers. The pyramids, however, have stood the test of time. Although their outer limestone layers have long since been stripped or passed into dust, the pyramid still stands. About 80 dot the horizons of modern Egypt. They remain as time capsules cast forward by a once great civilization. No. Geography and time frame. In 1856, British colonial officials in India were busy monitoring the construction of a railway connecting the cities of Lahore and Karachi in modern-day Pakistan along the Indus River Valley. As they continued to work, some of the laborers discovered many bricks lodged in the dry terrain. There were hundreds of thousands of fairly uniform bricks, which seemed to be quite old. Nevertheless, the workers used some of them to construct the roadbed, unaware that they were using ancient artifacts. They soon found some of the the artifacts made of soapstone, featuring intricate artistic markings. Though they did not know it then, and though the first major excavations did not take place until the 1920s, these railway workers had happened upon the remnants of the Indus Valley Civilization, also known as the Harappan Civilization, after Harappa. Mm, it was the first of its sites to be excavated in what was then the Punjab province of British India, and it is now in Pakistan. Initially, many archaeologists thought they had found the ruins of the ancient Maurya Empire, a large empire which dominated ancient India between c. 322 and 185 BCE. Before the excavation of these Harappan cities, scholars thought that Indian civilization had begun its Ganges Valley as Aryan immigrants from Persia and Central Asia populated the region around 1250 BCE. The discovery of ancient Harappan cities unsettled the conception and moved the timeline back another 1500 years, situating the Indus Valley civilization in an entirely different environmental context. Scholars are still piecing together information about this mysterious fifth civilization, but they have learned a great deal about it since its rediscovery. Its origins seem to lie in a settlement named Mehergar in the foothills of a mountain pass in modern-day Balochistan in western Pakistan. There is evidence of the settlement in this area as early as 7000 BCE. The Indus Valley Civilization is often separated into three phases. The early Harappan phase from 3300 to 2600 BCE, the mature Harappan phase from 2600 to 1900 BCE, and the late Harappan phase from 1900 to 1300. What? This is a test. Oh. Scholars are still piecing together information about this mysterious civilization, but they have learned a great deal about it since its rediscovery. Its origin seems to lie in a settlement named Maragara in the foothills of a mountain pass in a modern-day Balochistan. In western-day Pakistan, there is evidence of settlement in this area as early as 7000 BCE. The Indus Valley civilization is often separated into three phases: the early Harappan phase from 3300 to 2600 BCE, the mature Harappan phase from 2600 to 1900 BCE, and the late Harappan phase from 1900 to 1300 BCE. This map shows the extent of the Indus Valley civilization during the mature Harappan phase. This civilization is highlighted in brown in the area of modern-day Pakistan and northern India. The rest of the map is green and is a partial map of India and the area northwest of Pakistan. Image courtesy Wikimedia Commons. At its peak, the Indus Valley civilization may have had a population of over 5 million people. And the Indus cities are noted for their urban planning and technical and political process concerned with the use of the land and design of the urban environment. They're also noted for their baked brick houses, elaborate drainage systems, water supply systems, and clusters of large non-residential buildings. The Indus Valley civilization began to decline around 1800 BCE. Archaeological evidence indicates that trade with Mesopotamia, located largely in a modern Iraq, seemed to have ended. The advanced drainage systems and baths of the great cities were built over or blocked. Writing began to disappear, and the standardized weights and measurements used for trade and taxation fell out of use. Hmm. Our urban infrastructure and architecture. By 2600 BCE, small early Harappan communities developed into large urban centers. These cities included Harappa, Ganarwala, and Mohenjo-daro in modern-day Pakistan, and the Dholavira, Kalibangan, Rakhigari, Rupar, and Lothal in modern-day India. In a total, more than 1,052 cities and settlements have been found, mainly in the general region of the Indus River and its tributaries. Mm, Mohenjo-daro is thought to have been built in 26 BCE. It became not only the largest city of the Indus Valley civilization, but also the world's earliest major urban, but one of the world's earliest major urban centers. Mm, Located west of the Indus River in the Larkana district, Mohenjo-daro was one of the most sophisticated cities of the period, with advanced engineering and urban planning. Whoops. And urban planning. Um, Harappa was a fortified city in modern-day Pakistan that is believed to have been home to as many as 23,500 residents living in sculpted houses with flat roofs made of red sand and clay. The city spread over 150 hectares, 370 acres, and had fortified administrative and religious centers of the same type used in Mohenjo-daro. Both cities had similar organization and featured citadels, central cities, and central areas in a city that were heavily fortified, protected with defensive military structures. Additionally, both cities were situated along the Indus River. This structure would have allowed those at the higher levels of the building in either city to look down on the river and see into the distance. The remains of the Indus Valley civilization cities indicate a remarkable organization where there were well-ordered wastewater drainage and trash collection systems, and possibly even public baths and granaries, which are storehouses for grain. Most city dwellers were artisans and merchants grouped together in distinct neighborhoods. The quality of urban planning suggests an efficient municipal governance that placed a high priority on hygiene or religious ritual. Harappans are demonstrated the advanced architecture with dockyards, granaries, warehouses, brick platforms, and protective walls. These massive walls likely protected.
Okay, this was your class time, and your class time is up. Inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.